Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Mark with Limo Marketer. I'm joined again here by Ken Lucci from Driving Transactions. I can't get away from this guy. Um, he's
Nope.
al-
We're
he's always
we're
providing
partners in crime.
pretty much. Anyways, so Ken just gave a presentation. It was in Chicago for what's it called? The Great Lakes Association.
The Great Lakes Regional Transportation Conference in Chicago. It's put on by the Illinois Limousine and Bus Association. It was actually 2 weeks ago. The inaugural event, first time they've done it, did a terrific job. So I gave this talk, and it's really kind of a financial state of the industry compared to where we were before the pandemic, and I think people find it interesting. So that's why I wanted to give it to the broader audience.
Awesome. And so if they watch this, they're going to learn just kind of where the industry is at in terms of like how much his travel came back and
Correct. We're going to talk about industry capacity. We're going to talk about the state of the operators compared to 2019, the profitability of the companies. After looking at 250 companies, these are the results of what we found on 250 companies prior to the pandemic and now. And then we're going to touch on some broader economic issues that I think all business owners should be aware of. Coming into the fall, forecast of a recession, certain things that could happen. We want to be able to forecast and be ready for the good and the bad, or the ugly, God forbid. But
yep.
in general, the industry is doing well. So I wanted to report on the whole thing.
Okay. Awesome.
Right.
Yeah, let's dig into this thing
Can
right
you give
here.
me permission to share?
Oh, yeah, I am sorry.
No problem.
There you go.
Okay. Okay. So this is the state of the chauffeured industry, kind of mid-year 2023. We're going to talk about the new economy financial trends as it relates to our businesses, demand and capacity trends we're seeing, and give you a little bit of an economic outlook for the remainder of 23 and beyond. So comparing the industry financial trends, you see this slide?
Yep.
Okay. So pre-pandemic, this is the overview based on our comprehensive financial analysis of 250 companies for banks, owners, sellers, and buyers. So in
Okay.
2017 to 2019, most companies, even though 2019 was a banner revenue year, most
Yeah.
of the companies were low or no profit. Most of them had less than 30% of them were able to report any net profitability. So no net profit. Less than 10% of the companies, or 25 out of 250, were able to post a greater than 10% net profit. Now, the average gross profit on trips, meaning after you pay your driver, your fuel, your fleet insurance, your vehicle costs, the gross profit margin left over to pay your bills was 30%. And we had pretty large infrastructures. And you remember, most companies had lots of reservations sitting in offices. They really didn't embrace remote workers. Now let's flash forward now after the pandemic. You see in green?
Yeah.
Okay. Most operators are actually profitable. And as of the end of the year 2022, 80% of those same 250 companies are profitable. 38% that were able to post greater than a 10% net profit. And the average revenue per trip charge has increased by 25%. So if you did an airport trip for $100 in 2019, you're doing it for an average of 125 now. Now that has a direct impact on gross profit on trips for sedans and SUVs. Now keep in mind, before it was the entire fleet, you had a blend of a 30% gross margin.
Yeah.
After the pandemic, sedans and SUVs alone are making on average 35% gross profit. Now I want you to think about it this way. For every airport trip you do for $100, at the end of the day, you're going to have $35 left over to pay all your other bills. Now the good news.
And what are those? Because I wanted to talk about that, because this will be foreign to a lot of people. When you
Sure.
say Yeah. What are those other bills like marketing,
A-
administrative?
all in your overhead. So think about direct costs this way. Any expense it takes you to turn the key and do the job, paying the driver, paying the fuel, paying the fleet insurance, paying for the vehicle, paying for maintenance and repair, etc. Now, all of your overhead is what's left over, right? So if you are not making an average of 35 to 40% gross margin on every single trip, you don't have enough money to pay your overhead bills, meaning your office rent, your telephone, your software cost, your your sales and marketing costs. Any overhead is any expense not associated with either putting the meal on the table or, in our case, doing the actual trip. So before the pandemic, we were only averaging 30% gross margin. We had 28% average overhead expenses. So that means there was no money left over to show a net profit. Now we're averaging 35% on sedans and SUVs. We're averaging greater than 40% on larger vehicles. I mean,
Wow.
motorcoach rates have gone through the roof. And now, more importantly, we have a much leaner operating infrastructures.
Yeah.
We permanently embrace remote workers, and the business in general, the large equipment is really what's driving the profitability of the company. Okay. So I hate to say it, from an industry perspective, just chauffeured industry and even the motor coach industry, the pandemic, those people, those operators left in business in 2022, 2023 are doing much better. A couple of caveats here, a couple of things to worry about. For companies that took EIDL money, meaning the loans, the emergency loans that are sitting on your balance sheet, banks are starting to get a little concerned about that. And we'll talk about that. That will affect your ability to borrow. So that's really the only lingering issue from the pandemic. We're all doing more business. We're all charging more for our trips. And the larger equipment, because there's not as much prior to the pandemic, which we'll get into. Everybody's more profitable, but we have to eventually deal with the EIDL debt that's on our books. So let's talk about the challenges right now everybody knows about.
Ken,
Oh,
one quick question. Sorry, just to hop in here. Those 250 companies, because that
yes.
data, that's 250 companies. What are the size approximately? What's the range, would you say, for these
We
companies? Because
go,
that's going to
we, yep, we
affect
go
this,
from,
right?
absolutely. We have analyzed companies from $1 million in business to 150 million in business.
Okay,
I
so
will
these are
tell you,
larger operators,
well,
and the
think about
numbers, they're going to
about,
have
uh,
more administrative and
right, but about half of them are about between 1 million and 3 million.
okay.
That's a good number, because I think it's a good microcosm of the industry. I think that the top 15% companies in this industry are above 10 million in sales. 85% are below 10 million in annual sales. The sweet spot in this business is between 1 million
Okay.
and 3 million. Okay. But it's more important when you're smaller to master all of this stuff. So I'm going to give you the biggest challenges that we're seeing. All of our direct cost to put the vehicle on the road and to do the job, all of these prices, all of these costs have gone up. Okay. So when I talk about new equipment prices are way up, used, everybody knows, used equipment is still crazy. It's 20% to 31% above 2019. Our fleet insurance is gone up on average 22%, and we can expect a 14% increase again in 2024 nationally. We pulled a bunch of commercial insurance carrier information. CDL, everybody knows chauffeur pay is up. Everybody knows it's tough to get chauffeurs and CDL drivers. Some soft costs that I think everybody needs to focus on is in the area of vehicle repairs and maintenance. Repairs and maintenance are up 35%. Maintenance is up. Regular maintenance, belts, oils, fluids are up 18%. And here's a new issue. The new issue is what I call excessive downtime waiting for replacement parts. That's a new soft cost. Okay. So if you've got an SUV and it's a brand new SUV or it's in warranty and it has an engine or transmission problem and it's sitting at the dealership waiting for replacement parts, you still have to make that payment. And you've also lost revenue. This was not a problem. Part availability was not a problem pre-pandemic. We have to price for that. Okay. Gas, we know gas is up, diesel is up. The average oil change is up 27%. Workers' comp for someone who has employees is up 11%. Here's the reality here. Here's the thing I want everybody to understand. I don't care what size operator you are. Your entire cost of goods, expenses, all of your costs, including everything that's on that slide, has to add up to less than 60% of your total income. So if you charge $100 for a trip, by the time you pay the driver, the cost of the vehicle, the cost of the commercial insurance, the cost of the repair, the cost of the fuel, etc., you better have 40 cents left over. That's what's known as your gross profit. Prior to the pandemic, I think people looked at their pricing structure every year, maybe every couple of years, and they never went up because there were a lot of pressures to keep prices down. I think now you have to watch your fuel bill every single month. You have to, even the smallest operator has to look at how much they're spending for gas month over month, year over year. And I think you have to, it really is a good idea to have what I call a dynamic annual budget, which is simple. Look back at what you did for revenue this time last year and look at what you spent last year and try to adjust your prices to match your cost increases. We have a dynamic budget program, but it's pretty straightforward. When you think of it this way, for every $100 you take in, you better not be spending more than 60% or 60 bucks on all of these expenses, the direct expenses. Everything else is overhead. Okay. So demand is back and the industry is still rebuilding capacity. You know, our internal numbers say that 40% of the chauffeur companies that were in business in 2019 are no longer in business in 2023. That's our internal analysis, as well as looking at California PUC licenses, New York City TLC licenses, and vehicle permits, as well as the Miami licensing. 50% of the motorcoach businesses that were in business in 19 are no longer in business in 23. You can look right on the CSA. We got the list and we reviewed it. There's literally 50% less motorcoach companies. Here's the kick. Of the remaining chauffeur companies that are still in business, they have less than 65% of their overall fleet capacity compared to the fleet sizes in 19. No one has the amount of vehicles they used to have. Motor coach companies have less than 70% of their fleet capacity on the road compared to fleet sizes in 19. But here's another thing that's taken place after the pandemic. At any given time, greater than 20% of fleet capacity is sitting parked because people don't have enough drivers. We have to continually hire drivers, continue to have full and part-time flexible drivers available. And every week, at least 10% of demand is being unmet by in-house fleet, meaning I don't have a driver, so now I have to farm out this trip, okay? Or
Yeah.
if a smaller operator can't find a partner to share the trip with because everybody's busy and there's just no capacity. We have customers that have SUVs parked with no drivers.
Yeah. One thing, so looking at these numbers, I'm trying to figure out how are all of these companies delivering all these rides when their fleet capacity is down that much if demand has came back?
Demand, so corporate demand, we can talk that through. Corporate demand, we believe, is about 80 to 90% of where it was in 2019. So when we look at demand, demand is only back 80 to 90%. But because we've lost so many companies, all of these people are calling around to other providers. For the first time, also, many companies, corporate clients, are using multiple chauffeur companies because there are companies out there that are still saying no. Not as many as 21, but we have to find ways, creative ways to say yes. because every time we say, no, we cannot accommodate, they go to, somebody goes to Uber, somebody goes to
Yeah, totally. Wow, that's
the, the,
fast.
the phenomena we're seeing on the larger companies, the global networks that used to have what I would call an A and a B legacy provider in a major city. You know, two companies will go to companies. Well, now because the fleet capacity is so low, they now have to have a Rolodex of 5 to 6 providers. They have to have a list of 5 or 6 providers and make phone calls to try to cover the trip. So what's happening with the networks is outbound affiliate trips in cities around the country are taking 3 to 5 calls in order to book the trip, right? To get somebody to say, yes, I can do that for you, or to send it through GNet and yes, I can do that for you. And there's still what's called a phenomenon. This is another thing that's happened since after the pandemic, is what one global network calls throwbacks. The day of the trip, unfortunately, usually with less than a couple hours notice, the affiliate will call the network and say, shoot, I can't do it. Okay, that's what we call a throwback. So now the global network, the affiliate department has to get on the phone and try to hustle up a car.
Yeah.
Here's the biggest change in the industry that we all have to deal with. Every single operator, large and small. We estimate there are about 5,000 new 1 to 3
Yeah.
car operators in the industry since 2021. Our surveys from 3 major commercial insurance carriers, I even think I'm probably half off on that. I think there's probably
Yeah.
7 to 10,000, right?
Yeah, I believe it. I
And
definitely believe it.
and the sad part is, you know, it would take somebody a full-time job to literally go through and try to figure out how many 1 to 3 car operators. You'd have to be on Facebook. You'd have to go all over the place. Even because of the way they operate their businesses, they're reporting income personally. They're not on the radar of the
Yeah,
IRS, right? So,
exactly.
so here's the problem with that. As an industry, we have to embrace and help these new operators, or they might price trips too low and cannibalize profit margins. No one wins when
Yeah.
people don't recognize how to make a profit. And
Yeah.
selling on low price instead of value is a serious issue. We as an industry have been able to command higher prices post pandemic. We cannot take any slide backwards. Period. End of story. So I'm hoping a lot of those 1 to 3 car operators will come to the Orlando Chauffeur Driven in LA show, come to the Vegas show, come to the state shows. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
let's
The
talk about the
most just don't know any better, right? I mean, they think that's all that
no,
matters is the
no,
price. And
no.
so it's not like they're trying to, kill the industry. They just
They
don't know
don't know
any
that.
better.
And here's the
Yeah.
problem. It's like a chef that opens up a restaurant. He could put a great meal on the table, but he doesn't know how to pay his bills to keep the restaurant open. I mean, the statistics on failure rate of small businesses in the first 24 months are staggering. I think it's less than 40% make it through their 5th year. And it's
Yeah.
really because they don't know financially what their cost structure are. They don't know how to price things. I see it all over Facebook when I'm looking at posts from small operators saying, how much should I charge to go? I just bought an Escalade. How much should I charge an hour? Well, the
Yeah.
answer is you have to look at your cost structure. It's a mathematical equation on a piece of paper. So
Yes.
let's talk about the economy. Always, the first hour of every single day, I'm either on Bloomberg, the Wall Street Journal, or the Economist portal. We have a Bloomberg terminal, or we're on the Economist portal reading what's going on. Now, there are recession fears for Q3, Q4, 2023. I mean, we are in Q3 right now. Q4 23 is, the fall approaching the holidays. Europe is already in a recession. Um, there is fear that inflation will not continue to reduce. The problem here is to watch for something that spikes inflation, like somebody blows up an oil pipeline, or a country invades another country, or there's continued problems with silicon chips or something of that nature. You have to look at a global crisis to see if it spikes. Inflation is going to come down on its own, but it's very slow. The
Yeah.
other thing that we're watching is the Fed will continue to increase interest rates again. Watch the
Yeah.
September meeting. Somebody said to me the other day, but Ken, I'm not looking to borrow any money. I said, you don't realize something. Every single time the Fed increases interest rates, everything in your business goes up in price. Go try to
Yeah.
get it. Go try to buy oil, get an oil change. Go to try to buy tires, et cetera, et cetera. So, but there's good news here. I mean, how will this? We'll get to the good news in the next slide. So, how is this going to affect our businesses? First and foremost, it's an increasing cost of capital, meaning it's going to be tougher terms to borrow. I was on a call this morning with a buyer who's buying a company and he's getting an SBA loan, and the SBA loan is 10%. Okay. That same SBA loan probably pre-pandemic was about 4% or 6%, right? So when you're buying the vehicle, you're going to pay higher interest rates. It's going to be tougher terms to borrow. We're currently greater than 8.5% on commercial fleet loans. You're going to see increase in commercial insurance. I would bank on 15% increase in 2024. And by the way, this is driven by personal injury awards. This is driven by natural catastrophes, property claims. I mean, it's crazy what affects a commercial vehicle insurance rate.
Yeah.
So you have to expect your insurance is going to go up. There's going to be an increase in direct costs. Your hard costs associated with vehicles are going to go up, and let's not forget your soft costs due to the lack of parts. So at the end of the day, your costs are going to continue to go up. There are increases in repair and maintenance. The longer we keep our aging fleets, the more it costs us to repair them. Now, just as a general rule, on an annual basis, if you take in $100,000 with, you're driving an SUV. Let's just say you're taking in $200,000.
Yeah.
You're going to spend 4 to 6% of that number total income in repair and general maintenance, oil,
Yeah.
gas, excuse me, oil, fluids, wiper blades, tires. So
Yeah.
for every 100K in revenue, you're spending about $4,000 maintaining the equipment.
Yeah.
As you keep the business longer, as you keep the fleet longer, those repairs are going to go up higher. You got to be careful watching how long you keep equipment. The older the equipment, the more it costs you to keep it up and running. And of
Yeah.
course, I hate to say it, we are in an increasing environment of labor shortages, and our labor rates are increasing annually. This is a permanent challenge. Even if there is an economic slump, people are gravitating towards gig work instead of full-time or part-time jobs. We are in a permanent situation of always having to attract new talent. So how can you assure you continue to be profitable? I'm going to make the assumption everybody's profitable now. It's simple. You have to charge enough to make money on every trip. And again, on a $100 trip, you should be able to pay all of the costs associated with doing the job, the driver, the fuel, the fleet insurance, the loan on the vehicle, and still have $40 left over, because chances are your overhead's going to be between 25 and 30%. Guys, get paid on every trip. Don't send out paper bills, and don't carry people's receivables. If they can't charge a credit card today before the job or the day of the job, don't do the job.
Yeah.
Resist the urge to increase overhead. Keep your G&A expenses very low. Again, less than 20% of total income. And resist the urge to drop prices and compete on price. If you know your costs and what it costs you to do a job, and you're steadfast in what you're going to make for profit, then don't go down any price. And by the way, about half the large equipment in our industry is still not back on the road. A lot of people sold off equipment. So vans, minibuses, and motor coaches and limo buses, all those vehicles, the prices are less competitive. If you've got a real sharp piece of equipment, don't sell it like a 15-year-old piece of equipment a competitor has.
Yeah.
Most importantly, Make sure you have enough cash in the bank. Everybody should have a savings account for their business. Everybody should have cash reserves. Now, this is a math equation. If I'm doing $500,000 a year in total revenue, I need to know what happens if, let's say, my revenue drops by 20%. What happens if that 500,000 in revenue now is 400? And
Yeah.
what happens if, I could always depend on doing $10,000 a month in revenue? Well, what happens if 3 months in a row I'm only doing 5,000? Okay.
Yeah.
So every business needs liquid cash, enough cash to pay your fixed expenses for either up to 4 to 6 months. So it's kind of simple. Add up all of your expenses, your car loan, your insurance payment, uh, how much do you pay your driver, how much do you pay yourself, add up your phone bill, add up all of your overhead, and try to keep enough money aside to be able to pay 4 to 6 months of those expenses. Okay, big situation here. Watch your borrowing, reduce your debt on the balance sheet. In other words, pay off those EIDL loans. Here's the general rule of thumb. For every $1,000,000 you do in business, or for every $100,000 you do in business, you should have less than 0.3 in debt. So it should be $30,000 in debt for every $100,000 you do in income. So if you're a $1,000,000 company and your outstanding fleet debt is 300K, banks will still lend to you. This is some of the stuff we learned dealing with banks. If your vehicles are not producing at industry averages, and we see this all the time, we'll see a fleet of 30 vehicles and only 8 or 10 of them are actually making the same industry average revenue that we see competitors doing. So
Yeah.
don't hold on to the equipment. If it's not, my rule of thumb is if you're not able to get it to up to industry average producing revenue in 90 days, sell it off, get rid of it, and keep the cash aside. We're big on budgets. We think you should be creating a best case and worst case dynamic budget. And the dynamic budget is simple. Look back at what you did. Look at your bank statements from last year. Look at your financial statements from last year and say, okay, in the month of July, I put $38,000 in the bank. That's my goal this year. Okay. Now, oh, wow. Last year I took out 37,000 of it. So I only made $1,000 profit. That's an easy way to do it. I prefer you had QuickBooks Online, but your key is to look back at like periods of time from prior years, or even last month. If you're new to the business, look and make sure you're growing every single month and making a profit. Manage your business with monthly financial statements. The best investment, I don't care if you have 1 million or 100, the best investment you can make is hire a part-time bookkeeper. You can find them everywhere, and get QuickBooks Online so that you're keeping monthly financial statements. I'm going to give you one reason, okay? Besides the fact that you should look at the same time last year, and it's not good enough just to look at your revenue or your software, because your software is not going to tell you how much you spent on fuel. Your reservation system is not going to tell you how much you paid for insurance last year or how much you paid your driver. So you've got to keep QuickBooks financial statements. Okay. The biggest reason to do it is so that at the end of the year, your accountant's not saying to you, oh, by the way, you actually made a lot of money and you have to pay X number of dollars in taxes that you don't have. If you're
Yeah.
keeping track of your profits every single month, you're able to not only budget and grow your business properly and look at your cost structure, like overtime. I have a client that pays his drivers overtime, and his overtime was 12% of his total revenue. It basically, overtime robbed his profit. Overtime took most of his profit away. Okay, so let's get to the good stuff. 2024 travel indicator forecast as of July 1st, 23. Okay. Domestic airlines are forecast to have a 9% increase in passenger count and a 7% increase in revenue. Now, I want to tell everybody, don't listen to how much they talk about in revenue, because they can have a better year over year in terms of revenue and have less passengers. Okay. Because they'll go up on their ticket prices. When people go up when airlines go up on their ticket prices too much, you know what happens? People take taxis or they ask a friend to drive into the airport. But
Hmm.
domestic airline capacity forecast to do a 9% increase in passenger count. Rental cars, which is a really good indication of the travel market in general.
Yeah.
Rental car market was up 12% over 2022 in the first quarter of the year, and it had 18% growth in the spring over the first quarter. So 12% up across the board, 20 year to date. But the spring was almost 20% higher than 2022. And by the way, they none of the rental car companies see a softening in demand either on the consumer or the corporate side. So that tells me corporate travel is absolutely back in earnest. We'll later on we're going to talk about, you know, rental car versus a little bit rental car versus Uber versus chauffeur service.
Yeah.
But in general, 2024 is projected to be up about 11% over 2023. Now, hotels in quarter one 23, hotels exceeded the 2019 quarter one revenue per room by 13%. But here's the caveat. Their occupancy was down about 2%. So they made up higher revenue per room, because they went up on their prices, right? So,
Yeah.
but for the remainder of 23 and 24, demand for business travel and groups is expected to drive occupancy. And not to mention private travel as well. But revenue per room is up 118% of 2019 levels. Occupancy levels are slightly down, but frankly, it's really negligible considering we're trying to duplicate 2022's numbers. We're not trying to duplicate 2019 anymore. We're just trying
Yeah.
to do better than last year. So this is airline statistics. Airlines are substantially recovered from the pandemic. Passenger counts, you look at 23, they're forecast to be about 82% of international return in travel. Domestic is 103. Domestic's already back, but in general, North America is 102%. As we get into 2024, it's going to be all above 2019 levels, except some international markets. But hey, I'll take 92% any day of the week.
Yeah. Right.
So let's talk about corporate travel management sentiment. This is the results of an April 2023 survey of 334 global travel managers and travel executives by the accounting firm Deloitte, used to be called Deloitte & Touche. So key survey findings: corporate group and meeting spend surged in 2022 and closed out the year 65% of pre-pandemic levels. That's 2022. Group and meeting and events should reach 75% of pre-pandemic levels by the end of 23. Okay. Now, 2024, the most I could get out of the survey was the sentiment of corporate travel spend for 24 is it should be materially above 2023. And here's the reality. Corporate travel is never going to return to 2019 levels, or it'll take a long time, because a lot of companies have changed their corporate travel policies. They're doing
Yeah.
what you and I are doing right now.
Yeah.
They instead
Zoom.
of hey, listen, you know, Mark, let's have a meeting. I'll fly over. I'll visit 3 of my customers. No, instead they're all doing Zoom. So a
Yeah.
certain percentage of corporate travel will not come back. Frankly, it's the reason why attracting clients in the 25 wealthiest zip codes is critical. Private clients are just as important going to and from the airport. Okay,
Yes.
here's an interesting statistic. 40% of buyers said they're working to reduce their environmental impact via their corporate travel policy. Okay, so people need to think about what's known as ESG strategies, environmental, sustainability, and governance policies. So smaller companies, it may be difficult to do, but you at least need to have some green initiatives. And that may be a no idling policy. That may be a policy of paying for parking instead of having the vehicle idling outside and letting your clients know that. Okay. Now, corporate travel spend will level out. This is my prediction, our prediction, and the survey's prediction. Between 10 to 20% less than pre-pandemic levels. It is just absolute fact that people have changed the way they do business. Many pharmaceutical companies, for example, that used to do what the weekly doctor programs where they would fly doctors around the country to do dinners with specialists to talk about drugs or therapies are now only doing them once a month, and they may only do them in the big cities, and they may do Zoom meetings for the smaller markets that their products
Yeah.
are in. Okay, so corporate travel planners are also concerned about inflation or cost increases. And here's a real way that they're addressing it. They, instead of having Morgan Stanley, for example, a report by Morgan Stanley says, look, instead of letting people stay at a Marriott, at a W hotel or at a Ritz-Carlton, they're going to mandate you stay at a standard Marriott, or you may, instead of a Marriott, you may stay at a Homeward Suites. Or so people are going down a tier into mid-tier hotels. Okay, so there's fewer upper-tier hotels in an effort to reduce cost. So here's the takeaway. Here's the takeaway. Pricing pressures are back. You have to justify your rates by knowing your costs. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't take away your fuel surcharges, because tomorrow morning something could happen and fuel could spike. Don't gouge your clients. Just look at your fuel surcharges on a monthly basis and just make sure you're covering your costs. Negotiate your best sedan and SUV trips in your most competitive. Those are your most competitive areas. Okay. So if you've got a corporate client and your corporate client uses you to go to the airports in sedans, yeah, be competitive on your sedans. But if you're talking about an SUV, you need to be a little bit higher price because of the gas or because of the maintenance, because of the repair, etc. And
Yeah.
hold firm on your higher. If you've got a stretch limousine or you've got a limo van, how many of those things do you think there are in your marketplace? The answer is probably 60–70% less than there were before. So hold firm on your higher priced vehicles because they're still in short supply. I mean, I looked at a Mercedes-Benz limo van from a standard run-of-the-mill upfitter, not one of the luxury upfitters that Oprah uses. That thing was $195,000. You can't charge $100 an hour for a
No.
$195,000 vehicle, right? If you have a stretch limousine and it's an older stretch, yeah, you may not owe money on it, but it's going to cost you more to repair it. Make sure your gross profit margins, out of $100 per hour trip, you better have 45 bucks left over. The only way to know that is to make sure you know your cost structure. Okay.
Yeah.
So emphasis to your corporate clients or anyone who says to you, Uber is cheaper. Uber is always cheaper. That is 100% misnomer in 2023. Uber, especially Uber Black, has increased prices an average of 47% from Q3 2019 to Q1 2023. Now, here's a fact I want every one of the operators to know. Less than 2% of every Uber trip is either an arrival or departure from an airport. And less than 4% of Uber trips are pre-reserved more than 1 hour before the ride, because people do not trust Uber to go when they have to be there at a guaranteed certain time frame. So marketing your company based on guaranteed on-time availability, no surge pricing. The price is going to be the same every time, and you can rely on me.
Yeah.
I'd also like to dispel the myth that people who use Uber are not my clients. Now, this is what we talked a little bit about on the rental car side. We do some work for an extremely large consulting financial services company. We do their RFP, and we do some corporate travel analysis work for them. And last year they spent $90 million on Uber. They spent $20 million on chauffeur services, and they spent, it's not on here, but they spent another $36 million on rental cars. So what I'm saying to every operator out there is, if you've got a client who is using Uber, don't poo-poo it and say, well, that guy's not my client. Okay. You know, there's one statement I always used to use, and I still tell operators today, geez, you're a little bit high priced, or you're 25% higher than using an Uber. People tell me that, but that's not always the case. And did you know that less than 2% of Uber trips are to and from an airport? Because Uber can't guarantee you that somebody's going to be available at 4 o'clock in the morning to take you
Yeah.
to meet a 6 o'clock flight. I can't. I can guarantee that to you. So my message is, operator takeaway: you can justify a 20% higher price by selling your value. Find out if you've got a law firm that you want to do business with. Find out where the top lawyers live and price out the trips from their zip code to the airport. And say, look, if you give me advance notice, I'm going to give you my best corporate rate. And price out what an Uber Black would be, because you can literally go on the app and price it out. Now,
Yep.
I hear that it's only really accurate 7 out of 10 times, but the reality is you should be able to justify being 20% higher by saying, look, I'm going to give you the same price every time. I'm not giving you surge pricing. I've got safe W-2 background check chauffeurs. I've got commercial insurance in case something happens, God forbid. It's a maximum that's needed. It's not the minimum. And I'm going to give you an on-time guarantee. God forbid, if something happens, I'll credit you the trip. No big deal.
Yeah.
And as an industry, we need to have an easy booking for millennials. What we don't realize is the corporate travel, all of the people who are on the road, that's a young person's game. All these large companies, they're hiring right out of college. Those kids like to use apps. And most importantly, in the corporate travel planning departments, all of the older people are retiring. Everybody wants to use technology. So you've got to get on a booking tool. You've got to use a reliable app. You've absolutely got to make sure it's easy for people to book through you. Your VIP clients, I don't like to give every client my cell phone number, because if I'm driving, I absolutely don't want to be answering the phone for future reservations. But
Yeah.
I would give my top 5 clients my text message phone number, a text number.
Yeah.
And basically say, look, when you make your airport reservations, either shoot me a picture of the confirmation or send me a text message, and I will get you taken care of. Okay. So there is a few things here that we always read Uber's annual report, and we're on a lot of their investor calls. Uber their revenue's gone way up because they're doing a lot of deliveries, and they're doing a lot of other services, and they're improved profitability. It's still not, I would say it's not GAAP, and it's not profitable. But what they don't make a big deal of is the reason why they're starting to approach profitability is they've raised their prices 4 times faster than the rate of inflation, and they're squeezing the crap out of their drivers. There is not a standard Uber driver out there that's making real income the way a chauffeur is. Okay. So, the takeaways to me of the state of the industry are the industry's in pretty good shape after the pandemic. What I think could screw it up is people going back down to low prices and not pricing based on the value they deliver. And the second is, anytime you come across a new operator, try to educate them, try to get them to come to shows, get them to come to and watch these kind of things, and understand the cost of doing business. I have a pet peeve. I see Uber advertising for drivers, Uber Black, big push last year to get people to go from Uber to Uber Black. Now there are guys out there with $75,000, SUVs, $50,000 SUVs that have car payments on them, and they're not making any money. So they're going to pick up some private clients on the side. Okay.
Yeah.
The problem is they're not pricing themselves to pay their bills. Okay.
Yeah.
If I'm an independent operator or I'm a small company owner that owns one car, 27 cents out of every single dollar should be set aside to pay my taxes. That's what happens to Uber. And that's what happens to people in our industry around tax time. At the end of the year, they're not pricing and they don't know their costs. They can't pay their tax bill. So that's when
Yeah.
people get in real trouble. Okay. So little commercial to pay the bill. We are launching our finance course, what I call our financials course, financial management program called Driving Financial Success. I don't care whether you're one car owner or a 100-car owner. It's what every business owner must know about their financials and their financial metrics in order to grow, profit, borrow, buy, or sell. If anybody's interested, there's my email address.
Yeah.
And you'll hear more about it in the fall. And I'm speaking at the Chauffeur Driven NLA show in October.
Nice. In Orlando. Okay.
I am.
Excellent. Excellent. And so what are they going to be learning in this course? Just kind of what they should, like percentages of where they should be at for each different expense. And
So first of all, it's pretty comprehensive. It's on a learning platform. It's not just a book. It's a learning platform with text and a video, and then it'll have questions, and it'll also ask you to tell us what your concerns are on the subject matter. Okay. Hey, Ken, I don't understand what cost of goods are. At the end of every course, at the end of you taking the course and finishing it, we get your completed workbook, right? And we do a strategy call with you. So what do
oh,
you
I
do?
love that. So it's done with you. It's not just they
Oh,
consume this
listen,
information.
we're not leaving it up to you. We actually have a money back guarantee on this. Okay. We're doing, I can't announce the price yet. It's not going to be cheap, but it's going to be less expensive than a car payment. I can tell you that. The average car payment. This financial course is going to take you through the accounting terms that you need to know and how to set up financial statements and what you should know about them and what key metrics you should be pulling out of them and where things should be, so that when you talk to your accountant, you should say, listen, I need to know how much money I'm making on every single trip. So this is the order of your expenses. So it takes you through the 3 financial statements: profit and loss, cash flow, and balance sheet. It takes you through some key metrics and how to set them up. You can go through the course or you can send your bookkeeper through the course. But here's the critical factor. If you set your financials, and again, I don't care if you're one car or 20 or 100, I don't care. If you set up your financials this way, you should be able to every single month know how much money you make on every single trip, know what your overhead is, know what your net profit is, so you're not surprised at the end of the year on taxes. But more importantly, you can judge from prior years, hey, how's my business doing? Okay.
Yeah.
Because the reservation software, all it's going to tell you is, am I ahead on number of trips? And am I ahead on revenue? But if you're
Yeah.
not tracking the fact that all your costs are going to go up, or your costs are going up, you're not ahead of the game. So if you're going to commit to be a business owner, I don't care if it's one car or I don't care how many. If you're going to own this business and you want to make a really good income, you have to know these financial elements. You have to know how to set up your financials, what is important for you to look at, and we're going to give you industry averages. Somebody said to me, Ken, how much should I be paying for my SUV insurance? And I look at in his state as another company and another operator, and I say, as a percentage of your total income, it should be this. Ken, how
Yeah.
much should I be paying my drivers as a percentage of my trip? If my airport trip is $150 to the airport, or 100, you can only afford to pay your drivers a certain amount. So the
Yeah.
finance course is going to teach you to learn your way around financial statements. It's going to teach you industry average financial metrics. It's going to teach you how to make a profit on every single trip. And in general, everything you need to prepare to grow, traditionally borrow, and I don't mean from leasing companies that really charge 15% interest. I mean to develop a relationship with your bank.
Yeah.
Grow, borrow, by another company or competitor,
Yeah.
another car, or eventually sell your business. So it's the
Yeah.
first of its kind in the industry. So it's not just a course, it's a full program. You're going to be able to take the course. You want to take one module, every other week, it's online. You can do it at your pace.
Yeah.
As you go through the course, it's going to ask you questions to to see if you're paying attention. But more importantly, it's going to ask you, what do you want? What else do you want to know about this topic? Are you okay with this topic? Then when you're done, it sends us an email. We schedule a strategy call with you. And I say, Mark, what are you concerned about? What did you think you didn't master? I don't think I can set up my financials this way. Let's find a bookkeeper to work with you. Let's give
Yeah.
this, I'll give this format. Let's give this format to the bookkeeper, or here's how you set up QuickBooks Online. Okay. So it's really everything you need to know about how to financially manage your business. Your
Nice.
relationship with your accountant, you're going to get taken advantage of if you can't speak the language. If you don't
Yeah.
understand,
Need
if
to know
you
the
don't
basics.
you do. So this is kind of like high school level accounting, maybe freshman year college level finance, right?
Yeah.
It's it's going to teach you the beauty of depreciation. It's going to teach you, certain things that help our business as far as, deductions that you can take. And more than anything, it's going to give you the knowledge that you know what to look for when you're looking at your financials, how they should be set up, the chart of accounts. Again, we always have to fix things for people because we say, listen, you're putting all your labor in one bucket. I can't tell you how much as a percentage of that trip your driver was because all of your labor is down in one labor line item. It's you get paid out of that line item, your reservation and stuff. So here's why we have to separate it. So
Yeah.
it's really all the financial concepts. And when we looked at the online course, it is you're going to learn stuff. You can't help but learn it. At the end of the course, you'll have a strategy session with us. It's either me or Cole, and it's basically 90 minutes. And we'll work with you and any trepidation you have about setting up. If you
Yeah.
need help, if you need a bookkeeper, we'll get you one. We'll refer one to you. But more, I think, frankly, you'll be able to set up your own books after you're done with this course correctly. Uh,
Yeah.
and on top of that, after that, you're going to be part of a monthly webinar. I mean, anybody who's taken the course can sit in on a 2-hour webinar, and the subject matter is simple: profit, progress, finance, or future. We're not going to
Yeah.
talk. We're not going to talk about a shiny new Escalade.
Hmm.
We may talk about the financial, how to price it. Okay,
Yeah.
and we're just not going to talk limo guy. We're going to talk profit, progress, finance, and future. What's coming down the pipe? We're actually met a guy from Cadillac, and we're doing a financial analysis on their new Lyric, how much it costs, how much you save in fuel, how much they think you're going to save in fuel and maintenance, or
Yeah.
maintenance and repair, and how long is that vehicle going to last you compared to a combustion engine? I mean,
Yeah.
the average EV can go 500,000 miles, where even the
Wow.
best combustion engine could only go 300,000 in the way we use them, right? The way
Sure. Yeah.
our
Yeah.
So yeah,
Totally.
we're excited. We're excited about the course. Excited to be speaking at the CDNLA show in Orlando, and excited for the M&A side of the business. We've got 3 companies that we have sold. We think they've sold. They're going to close by October 2nd, and
Nice.
we're gonna have a full plate. Business is good, like you.
Yeah. Well, guys, it sounds like, look, if you want to get serious about growing your business, like you need to know these numbers in order to price your rides, in order to ensure there's a profit. And I know personally, and I'm in a completely different business, but the agency world, the reason I like my accountant sends me it each month. I like to see, okay, which expense has gone like through the roof and why. And you can catch things,
Yeah,
especially the bigger you get, like money
yeah,
just starts going all these places and you're like, wait a second, what's happening over here? And then you catch something before, you go 6 months and it becomes a bigger and bigger problem. So
you know,
I love it.
life life is simple when you have one car and you're the driver, right?
Yes.
If you want to ever get to the second car and then go to the fifth car and then go to the 10th car, you've got to have your financial foundation set up. You know, it breaks my heart when I see new operators on Facebook saying, I just paid 90,000 for an Escalade. How much should I charge an hour for it? My head explodes. Okay, because I say to them, take a piece of paper and write down your payment, write down what your commercial insurance costs, write down how much fuel you use on a weekly basis, write down what you pay your relief driver if you're not driving, or put an hourly rate in for yourself so you can actually pay W-2 income, put a
Yeah.
plug in for maintenance and repair. Okay, this is what it costs you. We actually have the second thing that we're coming out with is a cost calculator. I can tell you what stuff costs you to sit in your parking lot just to keep it ready. You'd be amazed at what these vehicles cost if it's sitting doing absolutely nothing. It really, if you're committed to owning a business, okay, if this is just a gig for you and you're not going to grow a business, create wealth, and grow a real enterprise, this is not a good course for you, okay? Because
Yes.
you're not serious about growing your business. But if you ever want to get any bigger than you are, you have to master the financial elements of owning a business. I mean, you should be saying to your accountant, what kind of depreciation are we depreciating and how fast are we depreciating this vehicle? The course is going to teach you the best ways to do it. Okay. If you rely on your accountant, they don't know the chauffeur business.
No,
They
no.
they don't
Yeah.
know they don't know that you should be doing double accelerated depreciation on your sedans and SUVs and standard straight line depreciation on your bigger equipment. There's a lot of things that you'll be able to dialogue with them because again, you'll be able to find your way around your financial statement. You know, to
Yeah.
me, it's knowing the financial health of your business. It's managing the financial health of your business. It's not as sexy as a brand new Cadillac Escalade, but you
No,
know,
it's not.
it's as essential. It
Yeah.
is as essential.
And I think when you're giving out a prize and someone's like, can you sharpen your pencil? I think having the knowledge of what you actually spend, which most people do not know what it costs to do an actual trip. And the people that don't know, it's easier for them to say, well, yeah, I can sharp. But no, it's like, no, if you sharpen your pencil much more, you're not going to have any profit left over to pay yourself. Then you're not going to be sharp. Sorry, these are our rates. I would love to work with you. And here's what
Let
we
me
do guarantee
right.
we're going to provide you,
And let me tell you what goes into our price. Okay. Workers' comp for the driver in case he gets hurt on your property. Commercial insurance that covers you, the passenger. Okay. I can't really compete with someone who uses a private car that doesn't pay themselves, but they're not going to be there at 4 o'clock in the morning to pick you up like I am. You know,
Yeah.
we talked about this before. Selling on low price is easy, but it's the fastest way to becoming a commodity, right? When you
Yeah.
sell on value, you can command a higher price. Do you want to be perceived as the McDonald's drive-through window or Five Guys Burgers and Fries? Do you know Five Guys Burgers and Fries?
Of course. Yeah. A
Okay. Do you know what a burger costs at Five Guys Burgers and Fries?
lot more than
11
McDonald's. Yeah.
$11. Do you know why? It's never frozen. Never frozen. The quality is incredible. And of course, there's not 100 people lining up in to go to the Five Guys like the drive-through at McDonald's at noon, but they're obviously doing something right because they're selling $10 or $12 burgers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every day we make decisions on value, and it's all based on price. Do you think that the coffee beans at Starbucks cost the same amount of money and that are the same quality as the coffee beans at 7-Eleven? The answer is no. The
Yeah.
7-Eleven coffee beans, but probably picked 3 years ago, and they've been in the
Yes.
warehouse, right? Starbucks coffee beans get flown directly to Starbucks. They do the roasting, etc. So selling on value starts by knowing your cost structure, by knowing everything that goes into your cost, and knowing the hot buttons of your clients. But listen, when I was an operator, I did not do this. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was
I think
lucky.
most don't probably,
I,
you know?
I was lucky, but see, times were different then. Okay. I mean, there was no Uber when I was in the business. Okay. And unfortunately now, even if you're driving a higher level piece of equipment or you even a stretch limousine for weddings, people are still equating you to the fact that they can get a $20 ride someplace. No, you can't. If
Yeah.
you want me to guarantee that you're going to be to the church on time, and you want this kind of level of quality and a picture in the background with, with the beautiful car, beautiful limousine with your bride, this is what it costs me to stay in business. So,
Yeah.
the financial subject matter is dry. We try to make it, fun and exciting. That's why we're approaching the course this way. We want you to spend the time on it. We don't expect you to learn everything on it. If you get into trouble or think there are things you don't master, we'll spend time with you on the webinars. You'll get to talk to other operators and roundtable with them. So we're hoping it's going to be a success. It's been reviewed by 3 CPAs. It's going on a Teachables platform because I didn't want to send around a workbook. There's some really cool little videos that kind of give you real life examples.
Yeah.
Um,
And when are you
so
launching it, did you say?
we're hoping that the new website will be up after Labor Day, and we're hoping to have it live Labor Day for the first group of people. We call it early bird. And again, it's the course strategy session after you're done, a monthly webinar. I will absolutely invite Mark Petrie to come to the monthly webinars because we're going to talk about everything that's on that P&L. We're going to talk
Yeah.
about the cost of generating a lead and what happens when you don't sell that lead. We've talked about that stuff before. You've
Totally.
already paid for the lead,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And where do they go to find out more about it?
Drivingtransactions.com.
Okay.
Okay, that's my website right back there. And or you could just email me at Lucci at drivingyouриncome.com. That's my website,
Cool.
excuse me,
And
that's my email address. But go to the Driving Transactions website. There's a form that they could just fill out a form and say, hey, I'm interested in learning more about the course. So
excellent.
yeah,
Excellent. Okay, cool.
and
Well,
when we're ready to launch, I'm gonna call upon you to send out some emails too. So
of
yeah,
course, I'd
yep,
love to.
sounds good.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, hey, Ken, thanks so much for your time.
Now
It's
this is
been,
the highlight of my week. When I
yeah,
get a
no,
chance
it's always
to,
fun.
it
I
is.
always learn a ton, you know?
No, it's just, when you talk to, this, when you talk to operators, you hear kind of the similar stories and the similar issues. So it's nice when you're able to address them all. I definitely think the industry is challenging, but I also think it's fun. I
Yeah.
also think that, it's a good time to make money. We've all demonstrated you can't not go to an industry event and realize that people are making more money now than before. But it's twice as important to know your cost and maintain your pricing structure because we could easily slide back to pre-pandemic when nobody was really making any money.
Yeah. We need to get that new blood in the industry to these conferences to get them educated, right?
Absolutely. And they're all high tech kids. I mean, they're all a lot more technical than I was,
Yeah.
and I think that the operators I work with that are doing better, they'll either say, listen, I'm going to teach my wife to do QuickBooks, or you can learn QuickBooks on any tutorial on YouTube. There's 100 of them. But
Totally.
what we give you is the chart of accounts and the way it should be put
Yes.
together. And we also teach you the most important things you need to look for. So, yeah, I agree. We need to get the next generation educated on why they need to price a certain way. And, sometimes the best customer that you ever had are the ones that you just let go for low price.
Yeah.
If they don't appreciate your value and the fact that you're getting up at the crack of dawn to get them to the airport, or you're waiting for them in the middle of the night when you could be home with your kids, they better be paying you decent value, or let them sit there
Totally.
and wait. Let them sit there for 20 minutes or 30 minutes and wait for surge pricing on Uber instead of guaranteeing on time performance and guaranteeing the same price every single time.
That's it. Yeah, no, I love it. All right. Well, let's do this again soon, Ken. And
Sounds
as
good.
always, thanks so much for doing this.
All right. Talk to you soon.
All right.